The San Francisco 49ers suffer yet another excruciating loss in Week 7. So the question is, are you a glass half full or a glass half empty type person? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about. The good
and the bad.
Now, there is no question there was more bad than good with what we were watching as the Kansas City Chiefs absolutely routed the San Francisco 49ers at Levi Stadium. But the good outweighs the bad, at least for now. So back at it, talking 49ers football. Let's get into it. Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Ryan Tigey, back in action. The San Francisco 49ers, it did not look good. Going up against Kansas City Chiefs in a loss of 28-18, it was bad. All around, bad. In all three phases, offense, defense, and special teams, the 49ers got outmatched. But I will say, similar to what we've witnessed earlier in the year, this loss, this was more on the offense than it was on the defense. The defense was able to hold Patrick Mahomes and make him relatively limited throughout the entire game. And the offense, they were never able to get anything going. And of course, it wouldn't be the San Francisco 49ers without special teams mishaps. And I know it gets credited as the special teams stopping the Kansas City Chiefs on that fake punt, but it was our starting defense on the field. So that does not go to special teams. The special teams continues to be an absolute clusterfuck, a disaster. Nothing is good about the 49ers special teams. And there is no question the 49ers offense, they came out flat. Anytime we've seen so far this year in the 2024 regular season, when the 49ers offense, when their script doesn't work, when they come out flat, the 49ers have yet to be able to find one person to come out and make a play, an impact play to help turn the tide in the 49ers' favor and get the momentum back to the squad. They don't have a player that's done that. And that consistently becomes an issue when the 49ers get up in tough games like they did during the Kansas City Chiefs game, and no one is able to step up or make a play. Perfect example, Brandon Aiyuk's drop pass. And when you can't step up and make a play, there's no chance you're ever going to win a grimy game. So let's get into the 49ers, what they did bad. So if we look at the bad, specifically, I want to take a look at the offense because there's a lot to talk about. And my two biggest concerns, if we just look at the 49ers offense holistically, it was the lack of protection from the offensive line and the lack of separation with the 49ers wide receivers. When you take a look at the 49ers wide receivers, the injuries have piled up. The 49ers, it's not looking good. When you just take it into account, the 49ers were out there with their 4th, 5th, and 6th string wide receivers. What do you expect to happen? I actually don't find it that odd that the 49ers were able to be unsuccessful when really your only target on the offense is George Kittle. George Kittle, he's a monster, but he's only one guy. When the 49ers are without Brandon Aiyuk, who's out for the remainder of the year with an ACL, the 49ers, they're going to have to lean on some of these other players. And the 49ers, with an unfortunate, unlucky Deebo Samuel sickness, Juaun Jennings out, hopefully coming back next week against the Cowboys. But honestly, what do you expect? Any team that's out there with their 4th, 5th, and 6th string wide receivers, it's going to be hard for it not to look like that. Whether you want to say it's because they're young or they don't have enough experience, whatever the case is, that's a fact. And we witnessed it live in action going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. But the biggest concern that I have watching the 49ers and the lackluster offensive performance, it's the same issues that continue to be a problem. Their lack of third down conversions, their lack of red down conversions, and then, of course, turnovers. So let's turn our attention to Brock Purdy. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This was Brock Purdy's worst performance I've witnessed as Brock Purdy became the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. It was bad. It's even worse than what we saw last Christmas going up against the Baltimore Ravens. And as I've talked about in other videos, what do coaches, players, and fans harp about anytime you want to talk about what helps a team win? The turnover battle.
You know, the biggest thing was those turnovers.
Well, the 49ers, they lost the turnover battle. Brock Purdy had 3 interceptions versus Patrick Mahomes, 2 interceptions. And we know, because you see it in the numbers, when a team wins the turnover battle, they typically, at a very high percentage clip, win the game. And that is what happened. But when we really take a look at Brock Purdy's game, it's kind of hard to put your finger on the pulse of what exactly was going on. What was causing so many issues? We know the wide receivers, separation, they didn't have that capability. The offensive line, they got absolutely manhandled throughout the game, getting no push, but it was something more than just that. Brock Purdy's decision-making wasn't great. Made bad throws where he would sail a ball past the player. Nothing seemed to be accurate or on time like it has been throughout essentially the entire time Brock Purdy's been under center for the 49ers. It was actually kind of bizarre trying to figure out or get into his mindset of where he was looking at or what he was reading with the defense. You know, Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, he's the best in the NFL. I think a lot of people out there would agree. He is top tier, high-level defensive coordinator. And it was something that Brock Purdy, I don't know if he just straight up had a bad game or if it was something specifically Spagnuolo was able to do, because Brock Purdy and the offense, they looked lost. When you just take a look at Brock Purdy's 2 deep ball throws that he hit, great plays, explosive plays. They're 20-plus yards deep on both, to the pass to Kittle and to the pass to Cowing. Those were both underthrown balls. If Purdy was able to hit those 2 players in stride, those would have been touchdowns. And that was something that Brock Purdy has been able to hit, and he's been able to hit on a consistent clip so far all this year. It is something he's been really good at. He's been a quarterback who's been number 1 in 20-yard plus throws and making big explosive plays. But for whatever reason, he underthrew and limp dick both of those balls. And I don't really know why. His throw wasn't impeded with an arm. He had clear throwing lanes on both passes for that matter. And just for whatever reason, it came up short. And that was something, although great in the moment, that he was able to take a deep shot and connect on the deep shot. But the more concerning thing to me was, why did he underthrow it? So even on the positive, explosive plays, which is what everybody wants, that can really change momentum, let alone you're just getting a big chunk of yardage, Brock Purdy came up short. And then there was just a lot of bad decisions. Brock Purdy was throwing the ball to players that weren't open. I don't take that as much as a negative, because clearly when you just take a look again at the lack of separation the receivers were getting, he was trying to make something happen. That is something I think as fans, you should be okay with. Because if something's not there for a quarterback and he's still trying to make a play happen, that's something that I would rather see than the opposite of just ending a play with no shot whatsoever, especially when you're behind in a game and you need points. But to emphasize how lackluster Brock Purdy and this offense was, with 4 minutes remaining in the second quarter, Brock Purdy was only 3 for 8 with 38 yards. That's bad. So then we talk about the interceptions. Brock Purdy, we've seen him have a game or 2 like this every year. So it's not something that happens regularly, but it is something that we can now say it's just something to be expected. It's just like with Jimmy G. You knew Jimmy G was going to give the team an interception at some point during the game. You were always holding your breath, just saying, when is the pick going to come? Sometimes almost even wanting Jimmy G to throw a pick just so you could get it over with. Well, with Brock Purdy, the interceptions that he had, there was one in particular that by far, in a way, hurt them and really was the turning factor, in my opinion, about what changed the game from the 49ers still having hope they're going to win to them losing. And that was in the third quarter. The 49ers, they were down by 2 points. It was 14-12, and Brock Purdy on the third down play was throwing the ball to the one and only Ronnie Bell. Now, Brock Purdy came out after the fact and said it was him, that mistake, that interception, that was on him. Kyle Shanahan said Brock Purdy just missed the throw, but I don't know if I'm buying that. Brock Purdy, a guy who is known and marveled at for how great he is at anticipation and being able to read and get the ball where his players have a chance. In that interception that he threw, Ronnie Bell clearly broke off the route really hard into the flat, whereas Brock Purdy was throwing more of like a spray fade. It was clear as day that Brock Purdy, he was throwing to a spot. And so for me to just sit there and say, oh, Brock Purdy just sailed the throw, I find that hard to believe. For a guy that knows the offense, is elite at processing, versus a guy who has more of a pattern of making mistakes and coming up short in big games. So I guess the question is, who do you believe? Do you think that was more on Brock Purdy or was that on Ronnie Bell? I think that was more on Ronnie Bell. And then, of course, the third down conversions, as I've already mentioned, it was absolute dog shit. The 49ers were only 2 for 11, something that has been consistent. They have not been good on third down conversions, versus the Chiefs, who were 8 and 14. And there was one particular third down conversions that parlays into another issue for the San Francisco 49ers offense, the red zone. The 49ers in the red zone went 2 for 4. The Kansas City Chiefs went 4 for 5. But as I combine the red zone and third down conversions, there's one in particular that I'm talking about because it was so pivotal in the game that the 49ers walked off the field with 4 less points than what they should have had. On the third down at the end of the half with like 20-ish seconds left, The 49ers were on the 5-yard line. The 49ers call a run play. Mason gets absolutely stuffed. Whether the offensive line didn't account for it, was clear the Kansas City Chiefs, they were stacking the box. They had no fear or no doubt that the 49ers were potentially going to do any type of bootleg. They knew the 49ers were running the ball. And what happened? 3rd and 1, Mason gets stuffed. And so one thing I will say about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I know the narrative is the Kansas City Chiefs have the San Francisco 49ers number, and they do. Until proven otherwise, they do. But the Kansas City Chiefs run defense, that's what this team's known for this year. For those that watched the game, I'm sure you saw the graphic about all the stud running backs like the Derrick Henrys of the world that the Kansas City Chiefs went up against and the yards that they've limited top-tier running backs in the NFL. This is what the Kansas City Chiefs do. So from someone who's just watching the game and understanding they are a run-dominant defense, they stop the run at all costs and they sell out to do so, it was probably the worst timing possible to have all of your receivers be out of the game. And again, when you go back to the lack of separation, the inability, of course, to establish the run game, that is a recipe for disaster. So that was just some of the bad that we witnessed from the San Francisco 49ers offense. I want to emphasize this. The 49ers are still in a good spot. As crazy as that sounds, and I know a lot of people are saying outlandish and crazy things like, let's just blow up the team, let's trade Kittle, let's trade Deebo. I'm going to take that as just an emotional overreaction because truly, that's dumb. The 49ers, the only thing that matters is getting into the playoffs. If you were to ask every 32 teams around the NFL, if they were to say, what's your goal this season? It's to get into the dance. And how do you do that? By winning your division. That's the easiest way to guarantee a playoff spot is by winning your division. And so what's the good for the 49ers? The NFC West. Because all those other talking points about trading players, Brock Purdy's regressed, he's not worth $60 million, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is winning the division. And right now, the 49ers, they went into that Chiefs game in first place in the NFC West. Since that loss against Kansas City Chiefs, the Seattle Seahawks are now in first place. But the bottom line is the 49ers are one game back from being tied up in first place for the division. And historically in years past, when you take a look at in the fans' expectations that definitely are a cause of this, the 49ers, it was also a concern about the NFC conference. Why? Because if the 49ers have the best record in the NFC, they get the #1 seed, which gives them a first-round bye, so they don't have to play the first playoff game. They go immediately into the divisional round like we saw last year. Well, what I can tell you is the 49ers, I don't think it's that kind of year. With all the injuries that they've sustained, and you take a look at the NFC and you see the Vikings, you see Detroit, you see Green Bay. As of right now, today, the 49ers, they're not playing better than any of those three teams. So the only thing that matters from here moving forward is just the NFC West, the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Arizona Cardinals. And the biggest threat, the Seattle Seahawks, who the 49ers have already beaten. Because if there's one thing I believe in, if the 49ers were able to secure the NFC West, and it is wide open because the NFC West has not been doing great this year. It's actually a gift that there is not another dominant, clear-cut #1 team in the NFC West. They've all had good games and all had bad games. But it's safe to say, if you were to ask really anybody with eyes, the 49ers have the most potential, and they are the best team in the NFC West. And if there's one thing I have confidence in, is the 49ers able to go on to the road and win a playoff game. But the best part is, when you win the NFC West, your first playoff game, it's a home game. Then, following that, the divisional round and the championship games, those would have a higher likelihood of being road games, which the 49ers, I have all the faith in that they would be able to do so. And then, of course, another good thing that people aren't talking about, because I understand recency bias with this loss, the 49ers have reinforcements coming back. Christian McCaffrey, the offensive MVP, he is coming back. The 49ers offense is going to change exponentially with Christian McCaffrey on the field versus him, and how this year's gone with them playing without Christian McCaffrey. He opens up the playbook. He gives other players opportunities. He is a massive difference because it shows why he was the offensive MVP. And then, of course, you have Dre Greenlaw coming back. Then you have Huff. Then you have Moody. So the 49ers, they have reinforcements coming back. And so the one thing also to take into consideration, it's not good or it's bad, but the Chiefs, they don't lose coming off buys. Literally, Andy Reid has not lost coming off a bye playing his next opponent, regardless of who the opponent is. So, all right, y'all, I just had to get up on here and give my 2 thoughts about the good and the bad. There's obviously more bad happening right now, but just remember, there's good. The 49ers, they are good, and they're in a good spot. They control their destiny of getting into the playoffs and making a run. So, all right, y'all, big week coming up. Dallas Cowboys. I'll be back with another video, but until then, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. Hit me up. Peace.